harsh, barren, unforgiving. This is Dartmoor, and in this series I will, with my assistant Chris Ball,
hello,
be looking at those places in Dartmoor where you've always wanted to travel to, but never dared to ask. I'm Spooky Lee, and this is Spooky Lee's Historic Dartmoor.
Spooky Lee, Spooky Lee, Spooky Lee, Historic Dartmoor.
The places he goes, the things that he knows, he'll curl up your toes. He's Spooky Lee. The places he goes, the things that he knows, he'll curl up your toes. He's Spooky Lee. The places he goes, the things that he knows, he'll curl up your toes. He's Spooky Lee. He's Spooky Lee. He's Spooky Lee.
Historic Dartmoor.
so we're looking for a stone that connects up, yeah?
Yeah, that's right, just a song.
Found the stone in Maryvale. Lee, can you tell us what is Maryvale?
Well, we are here at Maryvale, which is a Bronze Age Neolithic settlement, and this is part of it. Here we have a standing stone, which is known as a menhir. Now, we're not quite sure how old this is, but it's certainly going to be over 2,000 years old, and I think you'll agree it's a quite striking monument in amongst all this barrenness.
What is the standing stone supposed to respect? Is it like for graveyards, or is it just for like anything else? Do you know? Could you explain this to the viewers what it is?
Well, there's lots of theories that have been put forward. There's a possibility that this is saying that the Maryvale complex is a graveyard, so this could be a graveyard marker. It could have been used as a meeting point or a place for a ritual, and the fact is we're not entirely sure what it was put up for.
What was we walked past before and there was loads of stones across the thing. Can you explain why there was loads of stones all along the path and that? Was it a path or was it not? Or
Well, the best thing to do is if I take you along, we can walk along and we'll have a look at what the stones may represent.
is there any interesting stories about this? Was it about Stone Age people and druids, or medieval witches, Vikings, Romans?
Well, one interesting story is that many hundreds of years ago, when the plague had taken hold of Tavistock, this place here was known as the Potato Market, and that was because the people of Tavistock would come along, and in exchange for food they would give money to the local people who grew fruit and vegetables. So it was a place where they had to stay within Tavistock, but they could at least come out here and get some food.
Okay then, Lee, could you take us to the stone road then, please?
Yes, we shall. First of all, we've got a date with the stone circle.
Alright, so let's go to the stone circle then. So Lee, can you tell us about why you've brought us to the stone road here then? Is it a witchcraft thing, or is it just normal stone road? Was that a house or?
Well here, yes, we have here a stone circle, and again, it's part of the Maryvale settlement. Some people have suggested that in some way it's aligned to the rising and the setting of the sun, but that's inconclusive. What we do know is that it was certainly put up here for a reason, and again, like the standing stone, we're not sure if it was put up for a place of ritual or for simply a meeting place, that this could have marked the enclosure of a gathering maybe. Because something that we don't really think about that much is that it was a very ordered society, going back into Bronze Age times, and that there would have been set rules, and they would have had their own parliament, albeit very casual. And so perhaps this may have been used for that purpose.
What century do you think this was around then, if it was a meeting place? Do you think it was around the 17th century, 18th century, or before that?
Oh, we would be going way back. You're looking about 1300 BC.
Bloody hell, that's bad. That's before Christ.
It is, yes, and people don't realise just what antiquities we do have on Dartmoor.
Yeah, I thought it was like all over in Egypt first, and then it started spreading up to. I thought this was like the Dark Ages and that.
Ah, yes. Yeah, it's. I think it's because we know so little about it that people don't know more about what you can find in England and on Dartmoor.
Yeah, they probably got some bits on books, but some bits you're probably missing out on books. What actually really did happen and all like that.
Yes.
Because they said the Romans missed out Dartmoor completely, apparently.
I think, yes, by the time they had moved here, the climate had changed so that the Romans had no use for this, that they couldn't, it wasn't a place of agriculture because the weather was unstable, and so they just had other fish to fry, as it were.
Right, well, thank you for that, for this little circle. Should we take you to the row of stones then?
Yes, to the stone row.
Yeah, to the stone row.
He's Spooky Lee.
So Lee, can you tell me why you've brought us to this stone row then?
Yes. Here we have another very important part of the Merivale complex, the stone rows. And as you will see, it's actually consisting of two sets of rows, and it does go for quite some time. Here we have the beginning, and right up the top there we have the end.
So Lee, is there any interesting stories about this? Was there like Romans, Druids or monks or anything, or anyone like that around this stone row?
Well, as ever on Dartmoor, it's shrouded in mystery, and there are many local legends. We know about the potato market, as it was called, but we've also got many tales of the Druids using Merivale for rituals of all sorts, sometimes involving the killing of animals. The pagan diatribe that you would have the taking of a life in order for other life to come along. Fertility rites, and all sorts of offerings for a good harvest.
So was it planted out for like vegetables and all like that, was it, or was it just planted out for a row or a path, or?
Well, essentially here we have a stone row, and we're not entirely sure why it's here. Some people have suggested, just like back with the menhir and the stone circle, that it was set up to in some way represent the stars or the rising of the sun, so in effect an enormous timepiece, but that doesn't quite bear out when you do look at the constellations and the way that the sun rises. So we're still not entirely sure why it was built, but I think you'll agree it's certainly it's a magnificent monument. If we go up halfway along one of the stone rows, we'll see another stone circle. So let's go and have a look at that.
Thanks a lot, Lee. Take us there. So Lee, can you explain what this is then, this little stone thing? Is it a fire or?
Yes. At first, it looks like a stone circle, but when you actually arrive here, you realise it's a cairn.
Can you explain what a cairn is?
A cairn is a burial place. Stones built up around, and originally you'd have had a covering of turf on the top. So this entire area here is a cairn, and we can still see some of the stones. And in the middle here we have what's called the kist, which is where the body would have been placed.
So what's happened to the stones of the body then? They like Some been taken away, or?
Yes, the vast majority of cairns and kists were robbed within years of them being made, because often people would be buried with valuables. So really, you're mostly talking about those people who had some status and who had things that status brings.
What interests me, Ellie, is that the bones have gone as well. Why are the bones gone as well?
Well, in Victorian times, the antiquarians, those people who would go around looking at these sorts of places, they would hold excavations. So bones would have been taken to private collections and museums. So of course all we see now is just the empty shell.
Just the outskirt of it then?
That's right. Yes, but I think you'll agree on such a beautiful place. It's a very nice final resting place. And we've got a slightly larger kist just over here. In fact, you may be able to see it in the distance there. It's the slabs lying on the ground. And that's a larger kist, so shall we go and have a look at that?
Yes, let's go and have a look at that. So Lee, can you tell us what this one is then?
Well, here we have another kist, and it's one of the larger ones in this area of the moor. As you can see, flooded because we've had lots of rain in recent days.
So, is this someone older then? Is it an older person or a taller person than this, or?
Well, it's an interesting question. It's the fact that it is large says to me that this person who was interred in here did have quite a high status.
Do you think this person would have been like an old man or a woman, or don't know about gender, but do you know if he could be old or?
Well, the chances are, yes, if they were of high status, then they must have lived to an age where they would be able to achieve something within their own particular group. So I would say yes, it probably was. Life expectancy at this time, I think people were lucky to get into their 30s, so it may have been somebody maybe into their 30s. Well, that's it from Merivale, and now we're off to Houndtor Medieval Settlement.
Historic Dartmoor.
this is a house, yeah, that little thing might have been the toilet there. The stone bit is. But just imagine if you took a number 2 and that, and how would you get it down there? Would it stay there, or would it just
Stay there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's what I thought. A bit weird that, isn't it? Maybe the toilet was outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine getting up in the middle of the night and you want to go for a pee. Bad, wouldn't it?
We're now at Houndtor medieval settlement. As you can see, Houndtor looming in the background.
Lee, what remains do we still have here then of the Houndtor medieval settlement?
What we have here is a selection of 13th and 14th century buildings. We've got 4 longhouses, one of which we're in now, and also associated outbuildings.
How old is this settlement, would you say? Was it like Druids living here? Was it Romans, Vikings, Saxons?
Ah, that's a very good question. Originally, this was a Neolithic enclosure, surrounded by a large circular stone wall, some of which we can still see now. But the buildings we have here is a much later occupation. This is medieval. We're looking at about 700 years old.
What do you think life was like living in these houses and that? Do you think it was, you know, really, really cold for the people living here, or do you think it was warm for the people? Because they didn't have central heating back in that time, remember, did they?
Oh no, they didn't. No, well, interestingly, this settlement here charts the climate of Dartmoor, because originally, going back into the Bronze Age, the weather here was suitable for keeping animals and growing crops such as barley and other cereals. But we found that as the climate began to change, so too did the occupation. Life here would have been surprisingly well ordered. There are records showing that slaves were kept, and also there was a hierarchy as well. There was the lord of the manor, who obviously held the largest longhouse, other people of status, and then simple peasant farm workers, who in turn owned slaves.
Yeah, why was it deserted? Why did people leave here? Did they just like give up and just pack the bags, or?
Yes, we've identified 2 main reasons. One is the deterioration in climate. As you can tell, it's pretty chilly here, and it's usually raining. Funnily enough, it's dry at the moment, and so the people couldn't grow cereals, and they couldn't grow the things that they needed to eat. Another reason is the plague, various plagues that came to this part of the world. What you would find is some farms would be completely obliterated, everyone would be killed, and so people, somewhere like this, it's a reasonable location but it's not ideal. The chances are a farm which would have been well located suffered the plague, and so people simply moved from here onto a better site. So that's the 2 main reasons why we think it became deserted.
So could you tell me what this bit was up there? Was it like a castle, or was it just like a gate or something where you'd come through? Because you said, like you did say before, there was a big massive wall around it, wasn't there?
That's right, yes. The wall wouldn't have enclosed the tor up there, but obviously the tor is important, as is the hill, because it gave a certain amount of shelter. If we look around us, we're pretty much enclosed, but it's not so enclosed that if there was heavy rain, this area would be flooded. All the rain would flow down there, and then we see a drain, which would take all the water away and other things. So yes, the positioning is important, and I'm sure when this area first was settled in the Neolithic times, and then into the Iron Age, I'm sure that the people would have seen that tor and thought, well, that's a good marker to show where our enclosure is. So they would have used it as a landmark.
Thanks for your time, Lee. And hope to move on somewhere else, yeah?
Yes, we are going to move on somewhere else. We're now going to Croquentor. Walk this way.
So going up, Lee?
Yeah, I'll see if I can find the exact. Fungus.
Got a horse down there. That brown, that cow or horse.
We're now at Croquentor, which is just outside Princetown.
So Lee, could you tell us why you've brought us here today then?
Well, we've come here because this is the original location of the Stannery Parliament.
Why was the Parliament here for?
Well, many years ago when we had tin miners on Dartmoor, they had their own rules and they had their own law, and indeed they had their own parliament. So this is where the great and the good of tin mining would gather to have the laws upheld and established. And this was between 1494 and 1749.
When they had the Parliament, was there any punishments done here or any...
Yes, there were punishments. Here at Croquentor they would decide who was guilty of various offences, and offences would range between being fined or being banished, and indeed, for quite a few of them, death at Lidford Jail. Lidford is a few miles out that way.
You said this was this around the medieval times, did you say?
Yes, it was a little bit later than medieval, so yeah, still quite some time ago. But nevertheless, as you can see, it's the sort of place where if you weren't aware that there was such a body here, you would just think it was just any usual tour. However, we can see the arrangement of stones around here. This is where the people would sit and listen to the main person who would be presiding, who would be sat upon the seat, and they could call out. And also we're quite sheltered from the wind here, and the acoustics are quite good as well, with the sound bouncing off those granite outcrops.
So do you think these rocks here, do you think these were the people where they sat and that?
That's right, they were effectively seats for the Parliament. The reason why it's actually here, just outside Princetown, is that the 4 stannery towns are dotted around us pretty much in a circle. So this was more or less in the middle of Dartmoor, and also more or less in the middle of the 4 stannery towns, which is where the tin miners would have their tin stamped so that they could then sell it. So it's a pretty ideal place for the time. But when they did finish here, they moved to Tavistock for their parliament.
Banish the king! Kill them all! Kill them all!
Revolution! Revolution!
Who is the king of Ireland, you swine? Who is he?
Thanks a lot for that, Lee, and thanks for your time.
That's okay. The next stop is Princetown itself.
Which way did you come?
Historic Dartmoor!
We're now outside Dartmoor Prison in Princetown.
How old is this jail, Lee?
Well, this was opened in 1809 to hold French prisoners of war. It was the times of the Napoleonic Wars, and so we needed somewhere to put those French captured abroad. And it covers 30 acres, so it's a fairly large prison.
What kinds of prisoners are here today? Are they different to the ones with the French, or...?
Oh yes, it became a civilian prison in the 19th century, and now it's a Category C prison, men only, which means it's for those offenders who aren't deemed to be extreme dangerous. And strangely enough, this used to be a Category B prison, but being a scheduled monument, they weren't able to make the necessary security adjustments. So in 2001 it was downgraded to Category C.
What conditions were like these years ago when the French Napoleon Guards were put in here? What were the conditions like?
Well, the conditions, as you can imagine, were pretty vile. And there were certainly some mutinies going on. In 1815, an allegedly drunken officer ordered his men to shoot many people who he thought were escaping, but the word is that they weren't trying to. This man was hopelessly drunk, and there were many deaths and many injured.
Yeah. Is this a normal like a normal prison, like to any other prisons? Is there any other prisons like this today, nowadays? Like, you know.
Well, apart from the actual structure that the stones used, no, I would say it's a typical Category C prison. Obviously the architecture is a little bit different, but apart from that there's no great difference.
Could you explain up here what the bell is for?
Oh, the bell. Well, I think the bell would have been used to inform people that there were prisoners being moved into the jail and possibly out of the jail as well.
Does that bell still go on today?
I would imagine. Whether they still use it, I'm not sure. They've probably got something more high-tech now. But yes, the bell was certainly used years ago.
Okay then. Thanks a lot for that, Lee, and thanks for your time.
That's okay. We're now off to a somewhat different place. We're now off to Dartmoor Brewery. Well, here we are still in Princetown, and in England's highest town, here we have the highest brewery in England, home of famous Dartmoor JLL. Well, Chris, I don't know about you, but I need a drink.
Yeah. Same here as well. I can only drink Coke. Bloody hell.
This is where some of the brewery's beers ends up, here at the Plume of Feathers in Princetown. Princetown's oldest building, dating from 1785. It's the quintessential country pub with granite walls and slate floors. Cheers.
Is there any stories about this place, Lee?
Well, we know it's been used by many people over the years. There's a few ghost stories attached to this building, but I think that's for another series.
So, Lee, can you tell us why you've brought us here to this cross then?
Well, here we have the Merchant's Cross, which is just outside the village of Meavy.
Anything special about this cross then?
Yes, I think it's a classic Dartmoor cross. At one point it was regarded as the tallest cross on the moors. It used to be 2.48 metres, but in 1937 it was hit by a car, and as a result of losing some of its structure, it's now 2.37. But what interests me about this particular cross is the way it may have been used.
What do you think it was used for?
Well, we think there are two reasons. First of all, it acted as a boundary marker between the parishes of Meavy and Sheepstor. We also think that it acted as a guide for a trail that linked a walk between Tavistock and Plimpton Priory. It's certainly a lovely cross. and a very ancient one. It's called Merchant's Cross. We think that might be because a merchant, going back a few hundred years, may have paid for it, as well as the bridge that we've just crossed to get here.
So can you tell me any legends about this cross then?
Well, there aren't many legends, but as ever with the Dartmoor crosses, you do have a few stories attached to it. And these are stories of men coming along on a very long walk between Tavistock and Plympton, and they would come along and they would kneel here. Other possibilities that were possibilities of peripatetic preachers coming here to deliver sermons to people.
Very interesting cross. Right, thanks for that, Lee.
That's fine. And so that was the Merchant's Cross, and that was the first episode of Spooky Lee's Historic Dartmoor. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you tune in for the next edition. Thank you very much.